And we learned how the Korea's national pension system works, and then we have looked at how the pension program affects private savings. So what we found out is that the pension program is likely to decrease private savings, but not as much as the pension amount itself. So in total, the savings will increase. I mean, total saving includes pension savings and private savings. And then we have discussed the effects of pensions on upstream transfer. So in the economy where the children makes altruistic transfer to their parents, then the pension will decrease the child's upstream transfer, but not as much as the pension amount itself. So, and then interesting outcome of the altruistic model is that these two families, two individuals who are connected by altruism actually share their resources. So it means that if any one of the two parties, let's say parents or child, has higher income, then both will enjoy higher consumption. One of them loses the income, then both of them will suffer from the reduced consumption. Now, let me continue our discussion from there. So then we have talked about only the altruistic transfer, but not all transfers are altruistic, even within family members. Okay, because some transfers are actually an exchange. You know? What can happen is that, I mean, if you think about it, let's say you are a child, let's say your parents, let's say you do something for your parents, let's say, then parents will give, quite often parents will reward you with, let's say, higher allowance. Okay, let's say you helped your parents in doing something. Okay, you may get something in return. Now, the same thing can happen between child and parents. Let's say the child has a young child, so it's a grandchild, very young, okay? And nowadays, quite often that the grandparents or grandmother helps out the child care responsibility, okay? Then, quite often the adult child actually rewards the mother by giving them money, okay? That is quite common, actually. No, it seems like, so in that sense, it's actually an exchange. It's not all of that is exchange, but at least partly it's an exchange. Actually, if you look at the data, then it is true that the individuals whose parents are helping out with, let's say, the child care responsibility are likely to give higher amount of money to their parents. Everything else equal. Okay? So in that sense, it's an exchange. Obviously, this exchange transfer will not be affected by, let's say, pension program. Okay? It's like inside the transaction, within family transactions. So that's one thing that transfer would not, that is the one kind of transfer that would not change because of the pension program. Or actually some of the transfers, there is an interesting study about the relationship between child and parents. What they found out, it's a bit old, but what they found out is that everything else equal, richer parents receive more phone calls and more visits from their children. Okay? And it happens only when the child is multiple. If the child is the only child, it doesn't happen. Okay? But if there are more than one child, let's say two or more, then the richer parents get more phone calls and more visits from their children. So what is going on? Okay, the interpretation of the data is actually quite straightforward, right? What happens? The children actually are competing against each other to get favor from their parents, right? So in expecting, let's say, higher inheritance, okay? If it's the only child, you don't have to compete, okay? So it doesn't matter. Okay? You know that you will get it. But if there are more than one, there are competitions, and then it's a, so we call that kind of exchange a strategic transfer. It's a strategic behavior. So it's a very interesting study. There are similar studies. Okay, so what you're thinking is that those transfers, they are not clearly not altruistic. Okay, it's all that happens in exchange or in expectation of some reward. If that's the case, then pension would not affect those transfers. So in that case, we can say that even the altruistic transfer will go down, but the non-altruistic transfers is not likely to change, right? So all in all, upstream transfer will decrease, but not by as much as the transfers from, not as much as the pension amount. So empirical studies suggest that intergenerational transfers have a negative relationship with the recipient's income. Okay, this is an interesting one. So this is one implication of altruistic transfer. So altruistic transfer, I said yesterday that richer parents generally get lower transfer. Okay, it can be explained by actually altruistic behavior. Okay? If it's a non-altruistic, actually non-altruistic transfer don't have to depend on the parent's income. Okay, if it's a pure exchange, it's just that how much work your parents do for you. That should be the case, not the income. Actually, one theory goes that parents of higher income should get more transfer if it's an exchange. Why? Because the parents of a higher income has a higher value of time. Okay? So let's say your parents are a very busy person. Okay, earning fair amount of money each hour. But he or she does something for you, then you actually pay more to your parents because his or her value is higher. But if your parents are, are elderly and they have plenty of time doing nothing, then probably you will pay them a little because their value of time is lower. So actually one prediction of a model is that actually transfer in exchange should increase with the parent's income. There are some studies who actually found it, but in general it's negatively related, which means that actually transfers are quite fairly altruistic. But there are evidence as well that it's not purely altruistic. It's likely to be exchange, as I said, that the child cares, whether the parents do child care for the grandchild actually matters in determining transfer amount, or as I said, that wealthy parents generally get more visits, more contacts from their children. Okay? So that is also implies there are some transfers are strategic. So it's a mixed bunch. So in conclusion, an increase of public pension benefits is likely to have a negative but limited effects on upstream transfers. So all in all, what does it mean? It means that if you introduce a pension to the system, or if you increase the pension amount, increase the pension benefits, the pure increase of consumption by the elderly is likely to be smaller than the pension amount. Okay? Why? Because the private savings will adjust, or the upstream transfer will adjust. Okay? So there are positive relationships, but it's not as big as you might expect. Okay? So how big is the actual relationship is actually pretty important question. It's just still being studied. But theoretically, we can see that $1 increase of pension benefit does not necessarily lead to $1 increase of the consumption by the elderly person. It is likely to be lower than $1. Okay? By how much, actually, we are not so sure. Okay, now let's move on. So we have looked at the effects of pension on savings and transfers. Let's look at the labor supply. Okay, labor supply effect, I will just give a brief story about this. Okay, now what it is. Okay, what happens is actually if you think of simple model, if you have a pension, you can think of it as a decrease of the wage rate. Okay? Because before you didn't pay anything as your pension contribution, now let's say you pay 9%. Actually half 4.5%, which means that your wage rate is actually lower. Okay? So what does it mean? It means that the individual may work more or work less. It depends on income effect and substitution effect. Okay? So income effect means that this individual has lower wage rate effectively, so this individual is likely to work more. Substitution effect is likely to work less. So it depends on which effect dominates. That is very simple understanding of the pension program. But actually pension program is much more complex, because if it's not just taken out of your money, it will be given to you in the future, right? So depending on how you look at the future income, the effect may be different. Okay? For example, it differs by individual characteristics. What does it mean? It means that if you're a young person like yours, you look at this retirement benefit in the future is very far in the future. So the value of that benefit is very, very low. The present value of the benefit is very, very low. I mean, you won't see the money for 40 years, right? It will be given to you probably age 65 or age 70, which means you will not see the money for 40, 50 years. So it's like a pure tax, okay? From young person's point of view, it's like a pure tax. So it's going to work like a pure tax, as I just said. Okay? But if you're old enough, let's say you are close to 60, okay? So you expect to get the money in the future quite soon, actually, 5 years later. It's actually quite possible that you can apply for early retirement benefit and to get it actually 5 years before the normal eligible age. So let's say you are age 55, then actually you can get it next year or 2 years later. Obviously, for that person, this pension contribution does not look like a tax much, right? It's going to be, I mean, so the effect on them is going to be much, much smaller than younger individuals. That's one point. So depending on, let's say, how old this person is, okay, the effect of theta may be different. Okay, so young people may feel like it's a big tax, but older people feel like, oh, no, it's not a tax at all. You will get the money quite soon anyway. Okay? So in that case, the effect is much smaller. So that is the idea that go about. And also there are other things that the full rate. For example, like if you're a quite high income, okay, if you're a quite high income individuals have very low replacement rate, okay, which means that when you contribute the money, actually you will get smaller return. But if you are as a low income individuals, generally you will get higher return because your replacement rate is higher. Okay? So if that's the case, then for individuals of higher income, higher wage rate, this is gonna look like quite a big tax. But for individual of lower income, it's gonna be like a smaller tax. Okay? So it depends on, let's say, your replacement rate. So if your replacement rate is low, then it's more like a tax. If your replacement rate is high, then it's less like a tax. Okay? So that's what I said. And then another thing is that for other social insurance or welfare benefits, disability benefits, we talked about actually something like, for example, like the spouses, the wife who can get, let's say, survivor pension. Okay, if that's the case, then as I said, if there are two multiple benefits, you have to give up one of the benefits. Okay, you can get only one benefit out of multiple benefits. Okay, if that's the case, then let's say your income is low, but you have let's say survivor pension that gives you higher amount of income. Then actually this pension, you will not get any return out of this because you will give up this pension because you cannot get the multiple benefits. Okay, let's say you think of a woman whose wage rate is low but expects let's say bigger survivor pension from, let's say the husband is ill, so we expect then he will die in 5 years. Okay, I mean yeah, it's possible. So if that's the case, for her case, even if I work and pay the pension, I wouldn't see the money because I will get the survivor pension anyway, then I will not gonna collect my own pension. If that's the case, then theta is like a tax. Okay? Not the case, then obviously theta is more like contribution. So the idea here is that it's 9%, right? But it's not the same. They differ by age, differ by their income level, differ by the possibility of other pensions. Okay, that's one thing that this one discussed about. Okay. And all in all, but what it happens is that if you change the pension contribution rate, basically it has a substitution effect and income effect. So theoretically, it's ambiguous whether you're gonna supply more labor or less labor depends on income and substitution effect. And the retirement, okay, retirement behavior. So retirement means that you stop working and do not go back to do not go back to labor market. That's retirement. Okay, I'm done working. That's retirement. Now, old age pension may change retirement behavior in a number of reasons. One, basically you get the pension transfers income from working years to retirement years, right? So the income effect. So when you're old, you can claim this benefit. So it means that even if you are not working, you will have extra money. So it's obviously an income effect. So it's likely to make individuals to retire. Okay? So it's an income effect. Okay, another thing is that this one is the increases the possibility of retirement. Second one is the timing. So timing is a bit tricky because the timing depends on a few things. One is that if I retire now, for example, what happens is that you give up work for the future, basically, right? But you get the pension, okay? And then, expecting your lifetime, actually you can calculate how much pension I get for the whole lifetime, okay? So there is a trade-off. You give up your current income, okay, and future income, and then you get the pension benefits, okay, for the lifetime. So each timing has different values, different costs, and different benefits. So that will affect how the retirement is timed. Okay. So it will depend on, for example, like one thing, for example, is that you can delay the receiving the benefit, right? So I talked about it. In Korea's case, for example, you reach a normal eligible age. So if you want, you can get the benefit from, let's say, age 60. But you can choose to delay up to half of your benefit, from half to the entire benefit for 5 years, up to 5 years. Let's say I say that I'm not going to claim the benefit at this time, but I will get the benefit from age 65, 5 years later. Then they will give you interest, actually. Each year, you get actually 7.2%. So if that's the case, then actually this individual will calculate It's better to just retire now and get the benefit from age 60, or I should work now and then retire 5 years later. So it will change the value of your total pensions, right? So that will affect also the timing. Okay? So how the timing is actually decided is quite complicated. It will differ from individual to individual. Okay. Third one is that, the third one is national old age pensions may change the normal retirement age. The thing is that, let's say the national pension says, we will pay out the pension from age 65. Then you can actually set the norm for the whole society. 65 is the retirement age. So when you reach an age 65, it seems natural to retire because that's like a social, like a cultural norm, that age 65. So in a way that this pension system sets the norm. Okay? And if that's the case, actually it does not only change just your ideas, but it can change, for example, like private pension plans. So there are public pensions and private pensions. Private pensions work like public pension. You contribute your money to your pension account, and when you reach a certain age, you start getting the money. Okay? I mean, a large number of people actually also have private pensions in addition to the public pensions. I said public pension gives you not that high amount of money. Okay? It's like up to around 1 million won per month if you look at the current value. Okay? So many people feel like that's just too small, so they may, have their own private pension. Then private pension have the basically, works like a public pension. If you reach this age and then you pay out money in this way. Then how the private pension is designed, it can actually follow how the national pension is designed. Because if we believe that 65 is the retirement age, then private pension naturally is set at 65 as the starting age. So it can change not only the ideas, but how the actually private pension plans change and then forms mandatory retirement age. It's actually quite important. The retirement, obviously the ideal situation should be that you have to work until you can get the retirement benefit, right? If you retire too early, it's quite possible that you will not have any source of income for the intervening period. Let's say you retire at age 60, but your pension starts at age 65. Then it means that you don't have income for 5 years. Okay? That's not obviously a good thing. Okay? So the idea is that you work up to age 65, you retire, and then you start collecting your pensions from age 65. Okay. So that should be the ideal situation. So which means that it is quite possible that the pension system sets the retirement age at, let's say, age 60, 65, then the private business as well will adjust their practice to be consistent with the national pension retirement age. That would be the best ideas. Actually, in Korea's case, this is a serious issue, because in Korea's case, mandatory retirement age for many private companies, it's around 55 or 60. 62 is actually quite rare. So it's 55, 60, or 62. And then your national pension starts, depends on your age, okay? But in a few years, it will start actually as late as at age 65, which means that actually there are quite a number of years that people may have no source of income. Let's say your company lets you go at age 60, but your pension starts at age 65, then for 5 years you don't have a steady source of income. That's going to be a problem. So actually, this is actually quite a serious issue. Okay? So there has been efforts to change the retirement age, but obviously it's very difficult because employers don't like it much. When you push the retirement age, okay, to older ages, obviously it looks like, you know, from employers' point of view, it's going to increase their labor cost. Okay, so in Korea's case, for example, that now the government actually pushes the retirement age at 60, and then they introduce this system called wage peak system. Okay, in the wage peak system, the idea is that from the wage peak, let's say age 55 or something, okay, they pay you lower amount of money. Okay, so that is the kind of idea. But changing the retirement age turns out to be quite difficult. So ideally, this national pension system and retirement age should align each other. So that is the ideal situation. And worker tastes means that it will probably change the individual's ideas that when to retire. So when you actually look at the data, what happens is usually that when they relax early retirement rules and expansion of benefits available at younger ages generally increases the early retirement. So what they found out is that this rule of pensions quite important in determining individuals, the elderly individuals' labor supply. So when they allow people to retire early, okay, then generally that they found out that people do retire early. Okay. So what it is that many studies, as I said, such as the introduction or expansion of public pension has induced older workers to be out of labor force. The idea is that when you have a pension, the individuals will be out of labor force. They stop working. Okay, let me show you the diagram. This is a male labor force participation rate for many countries. And what you can see here is that actually over time, many countries actually, elderly 60 to 65, their labor force participation rate has been decreasing in many countries, in developed countries especially. Let me see. Canada, it has been decreasing. France, where is France? Okay, this is France. France is decreasing. Okay, it's quite low. So as you can see, that many countries actually have experienced, especially European countries, developed countries, experienced decrease of labor force participation of elderly men. We are talking only men. Okay. And where is Korea? Actually, Korea did not change much. Actually, the Korea, this is Korea. Korea's time series is short, but what it shows here is that it does not have much of a decrease. It increase somewhat and decrease, and then quite stable. So Korea's case is interesting. It didn't change much, but in many countries it has been decreasing, and recently it has been increasing actually. Okay. So from around 2000, early 2000, it has been increasing. Okay, so what explains this? Okay, and then it turns out that it can be explained significantly by the pension rules. Okay, so what happened in Europe, for example, is over time their pension has become more generous and it has allowed more early retirement. That induced more people to just retire. Okay. But it turns out that then it happens that lots of people just retire and claim the benefit. And what happened is around this time of year, around early 2000s, actually many European countries has reformed their pension. So they made more strict the early retirement. And then they actually reduced the pension benefits. Generosity of pension benefits. So then it made individuals to return to work. Okay, so that is the case. Actually, it's a very interesting diagram that older man has had decreasing labor force participation rate. There are lots of studies about this. So what it shows is that pension has had quite a significant effect on individuals' retirement behavior in many countries. In Korea's case, actually, we have a very short history. So Korea's pension actually started in 1988, which means we have about 30 years of history. Okay? That means that it's probably we wouldn't see a much effect of pension program on labor supply for many years, but we will probably start to see. Okay, because if you are, let's say, age 30, when it started in 1988, now you are age 60, so you are just entering kind of the retirement age. So we couldn't see much of the effect of pension in Korea, but we probably will see it in the future. The other old age pension possible effects, I said, delayed pension benefit may induce some workers to remain employed, right? Because they see that if they stay employed and delay the pension, then it can actually increase their total wealth, okay? Because it gives you high interest rate. The interest rate is very high, actually, surprisingly very high. 7.2% a year is like crazy. So they're probably, that may change, but anyway, it's 7.2%. So earnings test. What is the earnings test? Earnings test is that from the normal eligible age for 5 years, if you work more than and earn more than certain amount of money, your pension will be reduced. That's earnings test. Okay? So obviously, which means that if that's the case, it will discourage some people from working, especially part-time. Okay? Because if you work a certain amount of money, your pension will stop or will be lower. So which means that you will be, your wage rate is going to be lower. Okay, the last one. Because the 10 years of contribution is necessary, that some people may work, let's say, it's something like this. You have worked in uncovered sector, which does not pay the pension benefits, okay? And then let's say you have worked for part-time worker for many years. So you don't have any contribution to pension. But you know that you should have 10 years to get the pension. So what can happen is that some individuals may now want to have an employment that gives you pension benefits later. So it can actually change some individuals, change jobs from uncovered sector to covered sector toward the end of their career. So you have about 10 years left, then you may change the job. Okay. Okay, disability benefit. Oh, I didn't discuss it much. Disability benefit may discourage some beneficiaries from participating in the labor market. So what happened was that in many developed countries, what happened was that disability claims has increased over time as well. Okay, so disability claims has increased, which means that these individuals will get more individuals get disability benefit. So there has been actually lots of debate whether the disability benefit is responsible for decreasing this pattern of labor force participation rate, especially among men, not among women, among men. So, but we didn't discuss it, but anyway, there is a very interesting studies going on about disability benefit. In Korea's case, I don't think there is much of a discussion about disability benefit, but there has been lots of discussions about it in other countries. Okay, so by this, we finish our discussion on old age insurance. Okay, so we covered actually quite a lot. We covered the unemployment insurance and industrial accident compensation insurance, health insurance, and old age insurance. Basically, we have covered the 4 social insurance systems that exist in Korea. Okay? And as I said, these 4 insurance systems does not exist not only in Korea, but also in most countries. They exist as social insurance system. So we have covered these insurance parts. So in the first half our semester, we covered the social welfare programs, social policies, mostly about anti-poverty programs, and then we covered the social insurance. Okay, as the last topic, what I want to do is some special topic. Okay, and I found out that gender issues. That's the last topic. Gender is a big problem. No, I mean seriously, in Korea. Let me give you this picture. This is called the glass ceiling index. You know the expression, the glass ceiling? Glass ceiling usually refers to a limit, invisible limit, usually for women, that obstructs women from becoming higher income positions or higher positions. So there is a ceiling. You don't see it, but when you reach it, you know. You cannot just get more than the ceiling because it's a glass ceiling. Okay, it's an interesting expression. Now there is a glass ceiling index. What is this is from the weekly The Economist, and this glass ceiling index basically looks at the female-male gap in these parts, and they made it index. So the larger number means there is less glass ceiling. Smaller means there are more glass ceiling. Hey, our country is here. Okay? Right. Just in the bottom. Okay. Interesting. Now you see most of them are quite developed countries, but you may feel like, okay, South Korea is not that developed, so we may be here. But actually, there is something called Gender Equality Index that is collected by World Economic Forum or something. They announce it every year. They collect the data, very similar data, from about more than 150 countries. Do you know where we are ranked? Around 120, 130. We are basically ranked with most of the Middle Eastern Muslim countries. Like we are close to Saudi Arabia. Okay, in terms of our gender equality or gender inequality. Okay, we are very close to our Muslim brothers and sisters. Okay, so it has been actually quite quite a big problem. Okay, the South Korea is here, and fortunately our neighbor Japan is very close. And then Turkey is better than us. Okay, then Switzerland, Czech, and then go all the way up, and then we have mostly Northern European countries like Finland, Norway, Sweden, and Poland, France, and then this is the OECD average. Okay, and we are way below at the bottom. Okay, now this gender gap has been actually recognized for quite long time. Actually, if we look at our gender inequality index, we are consistently at the bottom for many years. Okay, it's like around 120, 130. Okay, you probably don't know the name of the countries around us when you look at the rank. Okay, where they are. Okay. Now, what happened? Actually, I will show you what happened later. Now, what's in the index? They have index of higher education gap. Okay, so which means like a female-male gap in the, let's say, university education or something. Labor force participation gap. Okay, and wage gap. Share of senior managers who are women. Okay. In Korea, it's notorious. Korea is notorious for having very few senior managers in private companies. You wouldn't see. Actually, you will see. We see only few. Okay, if we exclude those family members of chaebol, probably we'll see only a handful. Okay. Women on company boards, like executive boards, we have very few women on company boards. Okay. Now we see that, obviously that we should be bottom. Child care costs, I'm not sure about how high it is, but people feel like it's quite high. And paid maternity leave, how generous the paid maternity leave is. Korea is improving. And then share of GMAT candidates, it's a business school students, basically. Graduate business school students, like MBA programs. How many women are in the MBA programs? Yeah, I don't think it's many. And women in parliament. How many lawmakers in parliament? We have only a handful. Okay, most of our National Assembly members are men. So obviously, when you look at one by one, the Korea cannot score high, so it's at the bottom. What is interesting about the Korea's case is that education gap between men and women in Korea is relatively small. Okay, it's not that bad. It's not bad. It's okay actually. What is Korean women is underrepresented is in politics. Okay, we don't see many high government officials, women officials. We have only a couple, probably in ministers, and we have a president. Okay, that's good. Okay, well, probably not for long. Okay. So that's the thing. And then we have, as I said, we have only a few lawmakers. Okay, so in politics, we have women are severely underrepresented. And now what we are going to look at is the labor market. Okay, I will show you the statistics. Okay, this one shows the labor force participation rate of men and women from 1963 to 2014. So it's like a 50-year series for half a century. For half a century, for men, it was 80%. Now actually it's a little lower, and it's around 75%. Okay, it's quite stable. You can see from 1983, it's pretty much stable. For women, half a century ago, about 35%, which means only 1/3 were in the labor market. Now, it has been increasing steadily. And around 1998, 97, to the end of 1990s, we hit the 50% mark. And then actually it didn't increase much. Okay? It's kind of stuck there, 50%. So what it shows, we have 20 percentage point difference, more than 20 percentage point difference between men and women in terms of labor force participation. Okay? This is a huge gap. We have a gap of about 40 percentage point. Now we have about 20 percentage point. Okay, so it decreased, but it did not decrease as much as we want. Okay, it's obviously 20% decrease to more than 20%. It's a huge gap, and plus. Labor force participation rate of men and women have very different pattern. Did I show you this diagram before? No. For men, it's actually pretty simple. It increases and from 25 over 30, pretty much the same, and then decreases. Okay? What happens is that they go to schools while they're young, and then they enter the labor market, and they work, right? And around the age of 60, they retire and die. Okay? That's what happens. No, the man's life is only 3 phases. School, work, retire, die. Only 3 phases. Okay? It's simple. For women, now for women, let's look at it. While they're young, there's not much difference between men and women actually. Up to age 25 to 29, pretty much the same. Actually, women are slightly higher. in terms of labor force participation rate. The reason is, one thing is that a lot of men go to military service. Okay, that kind of changes their statistics. Okay, that's the thing. Anyway, that's fine. So 25 to 29, pretty much the same. No gap, basically. The gap happens when the women reaches age 30. And what happens? Labor force participation rate drops, right? Okay, and drops even further. Then it picks up when they reach age 40, but it goes up. It does not, never goes to this level, and then it's, I mean, this is just way high. The women never goes back to this level, okay, and then retire. So what happens here? What happens? What happens? So it seems like probably a marriage, childbirth, okay? Because that's around the age 30, age 35, childbirth. So what happens? So for Korean women, the age of marriage and childbirth is closely associated with dropping out of labor force. So what it shows here is that the gap between men and women happens here, after age 30. Okay, that's the thing. Now we call this M shape because it looks like M, right? The M shape. Now you may feel like, okay, isn't it natural? But if you look at other countries' women, that's not the case. This is Korea's LFPL. Well, I picked just two countries, not only one country, France. Somehow I got France, but anyway, it doesn't matter actually. You pick any European country, except for probably Italy or Spain. France, basically there is no such thing as this one, okay? It pretty much looks like men, okay? And they just stay in the labor market, actually goes up. It goes up a little bit when they're older. Probably there is some of a childbirth thing, but it's not clear that there is no dropping out. Okay, and then if you look at G7 countries, like including like US, like those rich countries, and you don't see a M shape. Okay, M shape is clearly a Korean thing. Okay. So what happens? I mean, so our labor market, in terms of gender gap, it works very different from, let's say, most developed countries in European countries. Okay, get that? So this M shape is it doesn't change. I mean, this M shape has persisted for so long. Actually, you see the statistics 3 years ago, 5 years ago, you still see M shape. Okay, it does not just change much. Okay? So that is a situation. So in Korea's case, the women drop out labor force much. So their labor force dropping out because of, let's say, due to marriage or childbirth is much severe compared to women in most European countries. So for example, like if you look at age 35 to 39, the labor force participation rate is around 60%. Okay? Age 20, 25 is 75%, so it's a 15% drop. So that is a thing. Now, if you look at the employment rate by gender, it's 2014. Now, the blue ones are men. Okay, if you look at men, it's around 75%. Okay, some countries are lower, especially Italy, Spain, France. Anyway, they are well known for lower employment rate. Especially Italy and Spain has been hit very hard by global economic crisis. Okay, they were not doing well even before the global crisis. But anyway, this one is actually, it's partly a result of those crises. The Korea is at 75.7%. So when you compare men, Korea is not, it's It's around the middle. Maybe it's not that different. It doesn't look that different from other countries. Actually, it's better than France, Spain, or Italy. Now, look at the women. Where are we? We are actually better than Italy and a little better than Spain, okay? And then that's it, right? Okay? And as I said, Italy has been hit very hard by economic crisis. And plus, Italy's women, their labor force participation rate is traditionally low, actually. Italy is like Korea, in some aspects. Anyway, so that's the case. And then it's actually especially low because of the economic crisis. Spain is the same thing. So Korea's women, even without economic crisis, we are similar to Italy or Spain. Okay? And look at the gap. It's like a 20 percentage point. And there are not many countries that have 20 percentage point difference. Italy has 18 percentage point. Spain, both are bad. So, okay. Where is Japan? Japan is close to ours. But their women, 64%, 55%. So if you look at it, there's about 10 percentage point difference. But actually, there's another interesting thing about this diagram. In no country, women employment rate is higher than men's, right? In every country, men have higher employment rate than women. Okay, that's very universal actually. If you look at any country, men have higher employment rate than women. Men have higher labor force participation rate than women. Okay, that's okay. I mean, that's very universal. But in Korea's case, the gap is particularly severe. So we're gonna talk about why, later we're gonna talk about why the women have lower labor force participation rate or employment rate universally. Okay. Anyway, Korea is pretty bad, the gap. So, and then there is a wage ratio. So female-male wage ratio in 1980, women's wage, average wage was only 43% of men's average wage. Okay? So men were earning, let's say, $1,000, then women were earning only $425. Okay? And then, fortunately, it has increased. So pretty much like every year. So in 2000, we hit 63%. But something happened. We are stuck there for 15 years. So which means that on average, we are talking about an average term. Average man, so average woman earns only 64% of the average man's wage. Okay? So how large is the gap? If you look at other countries, we are here. Korea is at the bottom. Okay, this is a bit different statistics. This is a manufacturing female-male wage ratio in 2007. But anyway, if you look at any other, the pictures would be very, very similar. So Korea is here. So 58%, it's close to 60%. Hong Kong, Singapore, Portugal, Taiwan, and then we have a bunch of countries that have more than 80. It's like 95.5%. Norway 89, right? All the way down. Korea is like so what it shows, our gender gap, wage gap is actually quite bad compared to other countries. Okay. Now there's another interesting observation. No country has 100. Every country has less than 100. What does it mean? In every country, on average, women are paid less than men. Okay? That is also an interesting observation. Why? We're going to talk about it later. So that's two observations, right? Women are paid less than men, on average, everywhere, pretty much everywhere. Okay? I'm talking about an average. I'm not saying that every woman is paid less than every man. I'm just saying on average. Okay? And then Korea is very bad. Oh, okay. Then another statistic is that we talked about their work, percentage of work. Okay? So percentage of work, we generally find that the percentage of working lower for women than for men. In Korea's case, it's severely lower. We looked at the wage rate, and the wage is lower for men than for women. No. The wage is lower for women than for men in pretty much everywhere. In Korea, it's severely lower. Okay? And this is by occupation. Okay, this picture, what it shows here, the idea is to show how the men and women are separated in terms of their occupation. So, for example, like if you look at the labor market, in some occupations, you see mostly men. In some occupations, you see mostly women. Okay? So, how it happens? So we try to look at it like using statistics. So in 1990, 21, 2001, 2015. Okay, let's look at the 2015. Manager. 2.1% of men are managers. In Korea, the women is only 0.3%. So managers, women are severely underrepresented. Yeah, obviously. Professionals, 18% men, and surprisingly, we have 23% of women are professionals. Actually, it has increased a lot, right? For 15 years, it was much lower than men, like 14%. Now it's even higher, 23%. Do you know why? What happened was that in recent years, for the past 5 years or so, Korea has invested a lot in social services. Okay, like we have now a lot of nursing homes, right? Elderly care. Okay, a lot of women actually work in nursing homes and elderly care homes. These people are considered to be professionals in terms of their classification of occupation. That's why, actually. Because most of the social service jobs went to women. So that's why it increased a lot compared to this. Okay? So we are not talking about like professionals like lawyers. Actually, we are talking about professionals like nurses, like nursing home assistants or something like that. Okay? And clerical support, we have more women, so women are likely. So sales, a lot of women here. So you see the salesperson, lots of them are actually women. And service is seriously that 6% of men service, but 16% women in service. Farmers, interesting. 1990, we have 16%, 20% farmers and fishermen. Now we have only 5%. So basically what it shows that Korea's agricultural sector has got smaller by a lot. So now it's not much of a difference, 16, 20. Okay, these are the blue-collar workers, pretty much. So skilled, unskilled, and manual laborers. So skilled, unskilled jobs, actually, these are some are skilled. I mean, these are not manual laborers. They work with machines or something. Women are little there, but lots of men are there. And women are actually here a lot more. So what it shows is that there is a difference between men and women in terms of jobs. A lot of men are in blue-collar jobs, right? And where are they? A lot of them are in blue-collar jobs, and some managers. And a lot of women are actually in service jobs, like clerical support, sales, and service. So there is a difference between men and women in terms of their occupational choice. And industry, you will see the similar thing. I'm not going to talk a lot. But interestingly, what it shows here is that in 1980, Korea's farming and fishing about 1/3 of Korean workers will work as farmers or fishermen. Okay? So in 1980, like how many years ago? 35 years ago. Korea was pretty much an agricultural country plus some manufacturing. So you can see about more than 50% of workers are working either in farming or fishing or in manufacturing. So at that time, it was pretty much an agricultural country with some manufacturing. So it's not that different from, let's say, developing low-income countries of today. Let's say Vietnam, probably. We were close to, let's say, Vietnam or Bangladesh in 1980. Okay, the manufacturing is generally like light manufacturing, textile, like shoes, those things. And we have other things pretty low. But now, obviously, the farming and fishing, we have only 5%. Manufacturing is still important, but not as much for women. It's only 13%. It used to be 22%. It has decreased, and now it's only 12%. So a lot of women are working in manufacturing, in the factories. Now, not that many. And what's increased is retail and hospitality and service sectors, right? Public service. So, and then, interestingly, a lot of women work in public service sector. Okay. So women are public sector, more than half are public sector, either public sector or retail and hospitality. Okay. So what it shows is that there are differences in terms of their occupational distribution or industry distribution between men and women. What are the numbers here? The numbers is called segregation index. The idea here is that we try to kind of summarize all these numbers into one number. Okay. What does it do is that we just look at the difference in this percentage. For example, in this case, it's like a 0, right? Because it's the same. The percent difference is like a 9.2. So you get all the differences and sum them up and divide by 2. Then you get this number. Okay. The idea here is that, let's say if you have like two sectors, A and B, okay, and then you have, let's say, men and women, okay. If the distribution of men between sector A and sector B and distribution of women in sector A and B are no different, then you will see something like 30, 70, 30, 70, right? Then you have segregation index 0 because 0, 0, right? And then if it's completely separated, then you will see something like 100, 0, 0, 100, right? That's complete segregation. Man works only in A sector, women works only in B sector. Then what you have is you make the difference, get the difference, 100, 100. You sum them up, you get 200, right? So this number doesn't look good, so we just divide by 2. Okay? Because we want to make it to up to 100. So that's why we divide by 2. So that this is just a number. So the idea is that this number is bigger. That means that the men and women are more segregated. Smaller, less segregated. Okay? And interestingly, actually, numbers are increasing. More and more segregation. But I don't believe these numbers much because the thing is, first, that actually to be more precise, we have to have actually more fine divisions of work or industry. Okay, so we have very crude divisions. So I don't see much of a use here. But anyway, that's how it is. Okay, so this is the summary that what we have just looked at in the diagrams. Okay, I will stop here. Then next lecture we will start from this. Okay.